As it stands right now, the Vikings have about $17.8 million in cap space available. The question becomes what to do with it. Minnesota reportedly has no sense of urgency to get a Justin Jefferson extension done, so that's out. You could look to do option one. You could look to do a pay bump / extension for Danielle Hunter, which I personally prefer that you go ahead and trade him. He's not getting any younger. He'll soon be 29 years old. And I find this kind of oddly comparable to Khalil Mack. So Ryan Poles, one of the first moves he did as new GM of the Chicago Bears was trade Mack to the LA Chargers, in which case he got in return a 2nd and 6th round pick. And if you remember, the first year Mack was in Chicago after trading for him from the Raiders, Mack was arguably the primary reason why the Bears made it to the playoffs that first year. But since that time, it's been a year-by-year decline. His game fell off. 32 years old now, Khalil Mack carries a $16.6 million cap hit, part of that 6-year, $141 million, $90 million guaranteed deal that Chicago signed him to after trading for him. Think about that. His game fell off. Everybody across the league knew that he was on the decline, and yet the Bears still managed to find a team that was willing to give up a 2nd and 6th round pick. Cap hits be damned. And the difference is Danielle Hunter is heavily coveted. You can get way more in exchange for him compared to what the Bears got for Khalil Mack, in my opinion. But that's option one. Give Danielle Hunter an extension. Option two is you could sign a few remaining free agents. Marcus Peters, for example, at corner. Yannick Ngakoue / Jadeveon Clowney as a Danielle Hunter replacement if you were to trade him. Option three, you could do nothing and let the cap roll over to next year, which would really help out with Kirk Cousins, for example, if you don't come up with an extension for him. His dead cap hit for 2024, 28.5. Let the cap roll over. It cuts it down to $10.7 million in dead cap. Or option four, and this is a pie in the sky scenario, highly unlikely to happen, but I like to imagine, so bear with me. You could look to make a splash trade. Who would that realistically be for? I don't see it being for anyone on offense. You have your running back group. You're set at receivers. You have your quarterbacks. You drafted Jaron Hall. He'll either be your backup or if Nick Mullins is still on the roster, he'll be your third stringer. You still need big-time help with the interior offensive line, but the Vikings seem to feel set at that, especially after re-signing Garrett Bradbury. Defensively, the other side of the ball, you still need major improvements on the defensive line. I could see the Vikings willing to add a player to that group. Who would that be? Quinnen Williams. He skipped voluntary OTAs. I would say he also skipped mandatory minicamp, except head coach Robert Saleh canceled minicamp. So we don't know where his mindset is at. Would he have skipped it or not? We'll never know. So we have to now wait until training camp. That's really going to tell us. I believe Williams and the Jets organization is in a standstill, kind of similar to Danielle Hunter and the Minnesota Vikings. Danielle Hunter for Quinnen Williams, not straight up. I know the Jets would never agree to that. I'll get to the final offer. Bear with me for a second. But yes, it would be a consolation prize going from Williams to Danielle Hunter, but you would still be in win now mode. You would still have an elite defense. You would still be in win now mode with the Aaron Rodgers era. Pair Hunter with John Franklin Myers, you'll have an elite pass rush, and Hunter's not going to ask for anything nearly as much money-wise compared to what Quinnen Williams is asking for. My first offer anyway, is Danielle Hunter and a 4th round pick for Quinnen Williams. And right before Joe Douglas says, all right, I'm hanging up the phone, I'll say, hey, wait a second. Don't hang up just yet. That was a test. You passed. Danielle Hunter and a 2nd round pick for Quinnen Williams. I would say try to haggle for a 3rd round pick, but Detroit still owns that from the TJ Hawkinson trade. But if Joe Douglas were to agree to this, then what would the cap ramifications be for the Vikings with Quinnen Williams on the roster? So did an exercise here playing Vikings GM, giving Williams the extension that he's looking for after trading for him. And I wanted to base this off of Dexter Lawrence's new deal, giving Williams a slight pay bump over that. So Williams, in this scenario, he gets a 4-year extension with a $25 million signing bonus. 2023, his base salary is already $9.6 million, so give him a pay bump, guaranteed salary of $25 million. The year after that, 2024, a base salary of $17 million, guaranteed cash of $18.5 million. 2025, $16.5 million base salary, guaranteed monies of $18 million. And just like Dexter Lawrence, after 2025, you can have an out and make your decision after that. It sounds wacky, but it's definitely doable if the Vikings want to make it happen, if the Jets want to make it happen as well, if they can't reach a deal between them and Quinnen Williams. What would you decide? Option 1, where you give Danielle Hunter an extension. Option 2, sign a couple of free agents that remain. Option 3, let the cap roll over into 2024. Or option 4, make a splash trade. Or if there are any other options that I didn't mention, go ahead and chime in with your thoughts in the comments section below. Comments time. Lucas Erickson says, get the Panthers first and a fourth from the Bears. Sold. Are you kidding me? If you can get a first and a fourth from any team, go ahead and get it done. Don't think twice about it. But like I talked about in my last video, potential trade partners for Danielle Hunter, the Bears would be the best case scenario for the Vikings because of the Panthers' first round pick. I don't think they're going to be a good team, so it's going to be a high pick to work with. Furthermore, I wrote this down. Here it is. Trading Danielle Hunter for just picks creates an additional $5.5 million in cap this year, 2023, bringing the overall cap available to $23.3 million. More cap to roll over into 2024. And if you can get an extension done for TJ Hockenson, that creates even more cap to work with to roll over into next year. Ethan Clant says, trade him, but only to outside the division, not the Bears or the Lions. I understand the natural hesitancy to trade within the division, but let's be real here. In terms of Danielle Hunter, we have baby Trent Williams and Christian Darrisaw, and we have Brian O'Neill. What you scared for? In fact, sidebar here, yes, we have elite offensive tackles, obviously, but they could not be more different. Brian O'Neill, at 6'7", with that leg kick out that he does, creates such a wide base for himself. He just naturally stays in front of you. You can't get around him no matter what you do. It reminds me of Stewie Griffin in Family Guy when he took steroids and Brian's trying to get around him and Stewie just stays in front. Can't get past me. And Christian Darrisaw, I believe he's listed at 6'5". He compacts himself into a ball and just beats the hell out of you. No mercy. So if Hunter goes to the Bears or Lions, I'm really not worried about it. Lastly, Joseph DeMello says, I'm pro player, but I'm getting real tired of players holding out over contracts they agreed to. I get the frustration there, I really do, but you got to remember, it's a two-way street. Teams also agree to contracts, and the amount of loopholes that they create to where they will cut a player without any sort of heads up, leaving the player SOL, having to scramble and look for another team to where that new contract that they get probably not making nearly as much money as they would have made had they not have gotten cut in the first place from their original team. So players, they get screwed all the time. Well, it's just the NFL. Why can't players stand up for themselves? And if they feel like they're not getting paid or they're not about to get paid what their true value is in that particular year, why can't they hold out as well? The way to remedy that is in the NFL, and if you're the NFL's Players Association, agree to this, it's never going to happen, but fully guaranteed contracts. Davis Bertans, for example, he plays for the Dallas Mavericks, of which I am a fan. You probably have never heard of him. End of the bench rotation, not even a rotation guy, just end of the bench guy, rarely gets out there on the court. He gets paid $17 million per year because he's still in the contract where at the beginning of it, he was still an okay player. $17 million per year. His cap hits $17 million per year. You know why? Because there's none of this in the NFL. Oh, this bonus and this incentive and prorated this and this. And if you can do this, then you'll get this much money. There's none of that. Your money is your money, what you signed on the dotted line. The NFL is never going to agree to that. So knowing that information, we're always going to have this tug of war battle between the team and the player.